Now this lesson's on graphing lines using intercepts, and previously we've been graphing using tables of values and also using the slope y-intercept method. So this is the third method we're going to use to graph equations of lines. And remember that x and y-intercepts, now x and intercepts are, the x-intercept is where the line crosses the x-axis, the horizontal axis, and the y-intercept is the point where the line crosses the y-axis. Now, let's take a look at this example, and remember that the y-intercept is the point where the line crosses the y-axis or the vertical axis. And if we look at this line, it crosses at this point, so the y-intercept is at 4 because this is going to be 0, 4. And let's take a look at some possible y-intercepts. So there's a number of places any line could cross on this y-axis. So we'll just put a few coordinates up to illustrate this. First of all, we could have a line cross at this point, which is 0, 4. We could also have a line cross at this point, which is 0, 6. We could have a line cross down here at this point, which is 0, negative 2. We could have a line cross at this point, which is 0, 1. And we could also have a line cross at this point, which is 0, negative 3. Now what you should start to notice is that in every case, these coordinates have something in common. And that's that when the x coordinate is 0, that's the point where the line crosses the y-axis, because anywhere along this line, then x is equal to 0. Because remember, the x coordinate tells us whether to go left or right, but if x is 0, then it's right on this y-axis. So to find the y-intercept, what we're going to do is let x equal 0 in the given equation and solve for y. And our y-intercept is always going to have the coordinates 0, y, so 0 and some value of y. So we'll take a look at an example here, and this one, we want to know what the y-intercept is for the equation 3x plus 4y equals negative 12. And first thing we're going to do is sub into our equation for x equals 0, because remember, the line is going to cross at a point where x is equal to 0. So when we sub in for x equals 0, we get 3 times 0 plus 4y minus equals negative 12. 3 times 0 is 0. And 0 plus 4y is just 4y. So now we have to get rid of the 4 to find out what the y coordinate is. So we divide both sides by 4. And we're left with y equals negative 3. So that means that for the y-intercept for the equation 3x plus 4y equals negative 12 is 0, negative 3. So we know the line is going to cross at this point. So let's move on now. And the point is 0, negative 3. And so we're going to look now at x-intercepts. And this is the point where the line crosses the x-axis. And so here, our line crosses at the point at 6. So our x-intercept is 6. And we want to take a look again at possible x-intercepts. And here's a point where the line could cross the x-axis, and the coordinates here are 3, 0. And we could also have a line cross over here, which has coordinates negative 6, 0. We could have a line cross here, which is 1, 0. And then we could have a line that crosses at this point, which is negative 2, 0. So all these are possible x-intercepts, possible points where the line could cross the x-axis. And once again, notice that in this case, they all have the second coordinate, or the y coordinate, equal to 0. And so the x-intercept is the x value when y is equal to 0, because on the x-axis, remember, y determines whether we move up or down. So on the x-axis, we're moving neither up or down. We're just staying at 0. So y is 0. So to find the x-intercept, we're going to let y equals 0 in our given equation and solve for x. And our coordinates for the x-intercept are always going to be x, comma 0. So some value of x. And y coordinate is always going to be 0. So we're going to take a look at our same equation. So we want to know what the x-intercept is for the equation 3x plus 4y equals negative 12. And the first thing we have to do here then is write our equation and sub in for y equals 0. And for 4 times 0 is 0, and 3x plus 0 is 3x. So now we have to isolate x by dividing both sides by 3. So we end up with x equals -4, and that means that our x-intercept for this equation is -4, 0. So when we graph this line, we know it's going to pass through this point, -4, 0. Now let's take a look at what we found before, and so this is the question we were doing before when we were finding the y-intercept. We found the y-intercept was 0, -3, so we know it was going to pass through this point, and we found that the x-intercept was -4, 0, and so it's going to pass through this point. And now that we have 2 points, and we know this is a linear equation, all we have to do is draw a line through our intercepts, and there's our line for 3x plus 4y equals -12. Now, let's just verify whether this is true or not. And our original equation is 3x plus 4y equals -12. And what we're going to do is solve for y. In other words, put it into y equals mx plus b form. And first thing we're going to do is subtract 3x from both sides to get the y term all by itself. And we end up with 4y equals -3x minus 12. And next thing we're going to do is divide everything by 4. And when we do that, everything simplifies to be y and -3 over 4x and minus 12 over 4 is 3. So let's take a look at our graph now. And the slope of the line is -3 over 4, and the y-intercept is -3. And let's just verify that. If we go from this point to this point, our rise is -3, our run is 4, and our y-intercept is 0, -3. So this matches what we found when we rearranged the original equation. So let's take a look at one more example. I want you to graph the line 6x minus 3y equals 24 using the intercept method. So the first thing you do is to find the y-intercept, let x equal 0, and solve for y. So what we're going to do is sub in for x equals 0, and 6 times 0 is 0. 0 minus 3y is -3y, and we divide both sides by -3, and that comes out to be y equals -8. This means that the y-intercept for the equation 6x minus 3y equals 24 is 0, -8. Now we're going to find the x-intercept by letting y equal 0 and solving for x. And so when we put 0 in for y, so we're subbing in for y equals 0, 3 times 0 is 0, 6x minus 0 is 6x, divide both sides by 6, and we're left with x equals 4. So the x-intercept for this equation is 4, 0. So now we have 2 points that we can use to graph. We have 0, -8, and we have 4, 0. So when we plot these points, so here's 0, -8, and 4, 0, all we have to do now is draw a line through these intercepts, and there's our graph. And if we want to check by using rearranging this equation, what we can do is put it into slope y-intercept form. So first thing we're going to do is subtract 6x from both sides, and we end up with -3y equals -6x plus 24. Divide both sides by -3, and -3 over -3 is 1, so that's 1y. -6 over -3 is +2, and plus 24 divided by -3 is -8, so this becomes -8. And we're going to look at the rise is 8 between these 2 points. The run is 4, and the slope then is 8 over 4, which is 2, and our y-intercept is 0, -8, so that matches up. We have a slope of 2 and a y-intercept of -8.